Welcome to Uncle's channel, thanks for watching today, and let's talk about Resident Evil Village, the DLC, or Resident Evil 8 DLC, and do a little review of it, because honestly, this is like the perfect DLC for this game. I found it terrifying, I found it fun, engaging, and just really expands the story in a really good direction for the series. Now, the story for Shadows of Rose is going to focus obviously on Ethan's daughter, Rose, and it's going to be basically of her as a teenager. She's trying to get rid of her, I guess her mold powers of sorts. It reminds me a little bit of like X-Men The Last Stand, where people are actually trying to get rid of their mutant abilities. But regardless, Rose is trying to get rid of her mutant powers. She's greeted by this scientist of sorts, and he basically tells her how to go into the mold's consciousness to try to get rid of the mold powers by finding a crystal. It's actually a pretty good story, and the game elaborates it a whole lot better than what I'm doing here. But in the mold consciousness, you get to explore the dollhouse, the village, the mansion, the dungeons all over again. But it's not exactly the same as the base game, because there's this new red mold or red fungus throughout the level, and it actually spawns different creatures that you can fight off, and also pathways that are blocked off, and you have to use your mutant power, or your mold power, to essentially blast away some of these fungus walls or some of these fungus blocking your way. And it actually has a pretty good mechanic to the game as far as like mixing it up a little bit. Instead of being more of an action shooter or using your weapons or your grenades, now you have a little bit of a mold power to go along with that, and as far as like blasting enemies and blasting these funguses out of the way. And I know some people are probably unsure about if Resident Evil needs to go in the direction of mystical powers, because it's always been so focused on as far as like, just hand-to-hand or gun combat, but it actually fits in really well with the storyline, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I won't do any major spoilers for the story, but there are a lot of characters from the core game who make reappearances in a little bit different light in that, and also some stuff from 7 that comes back into 8 as well. And overall, the story is actually really solid and brings a great little extra bit to the Winters family. But let's talk about the overall experience of the game, because to me this offers one of the best thrills that Resident Evil has ever put out. And I've played a lot of the games. I'll admit I haven't played all the Resident Evil games, but I've played enough of them to know that this, to me, is the scariest one that they've put out so far. Because this game focuses much less on action than the base game, and instead on just terror and overall atmosphere. And like I mentioned earlier, while all the areas are the same from the base game, it barely feels like that because the mold and the endless dead clones of yourself, the game is just much more haunting overall. And speaking of, when you go back to the dollhouse, which was literally the scariest part of the game, they've created a new terror of mannequins who follow you in the darkness, who will freeze when you turn around and face them, but as soon as you turn around and start walking away, you hear the scurry of their feet as they enclose around you. It's a terrifying moment, and it's one of the best the series has to offer. The puzzles of the dolls after this are pretty great as well, with a stealth experience, and this revamped dollhouse is now the highlight of the entire Village game to me, and not just the DLC. They really outdid themselves on redoing the dollhouse level. And while for me this is exactly what I wanted out of Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village DLC, I can understand there's a few things that some people might have a little bit of a quip with. First off, the first person mode isn't available in the DLC itself. The game itself was advertised as having the third person mode available for the Village game, which is cool if you want to play the game that way. I actually enjoy the first person better, but in the DLC, they only allow you to have third person mode, which doesn't make any sense. They're going to put out another DLC later that allows you to have first person for the DLC. I don't know, it's sort of an odd little switcheroo on you, I guess. And also something that's a little bit different is I think the DLC is a great bit easier than the core game. I'm not saying like it's a walk in the park or anything, but this game focuses more on experience than it does, I guess, action. And Village didn't even really focus that much on action, but there's really almost no difficult portions in this game. Even if you play on the harder difficulties, you're not going to have much of a challenge. It very much holds your hand throughout the experience, has a lot of different tutorials throughout. It's not a hard game, but to me, you don't play this DLC for the difficulty or the action. You play this one for the experience and the terror. And also the gold edition here, you would think when you bought the gold edition that it would include like the DLC on the disc, but instead they decided to put it on a nice little DLC code for you, which I'm never a fan of, because if someone were to buy this game used and they see gold edition, of course they're going to think they're going to get the DLC, but no, they're just going to get the base game and just have to buy the DLC on top of that. Obviously, if you buy the gold edition new, the DLC is included in that price. If someone buys it used, the DLC will probably be already redeemed, and they're probably just out the extra money. I just hate when companies advertise it as like the gold edition and they don't include the full package on the disc. It just doesn't make any sense. Overall, the Shadows of Rose is an excellent DLC, and there are other things included in DLC, like you get extra mercenary missions, and you got that third-person mode, but ultimately, we're mainly buying this game for the Shadows of Rose. And it's a great DLC, expands the story of the Winters family, great horror in the game, great experience in the game, and honestly, if you have Resident Evil Village, you need to get the DLC. This is some of the best that the game has to offer. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. And as always, go out there, find a great game to play, and just simply have a great rest of the day.